Welcome to the Lost Rewatch. The Lost Rewatch continues. We're at the end of season 2, and I'm joined by two of the greatest podcasters, bloggers,
nerds.
Just
no
nerds.
Nouns necessary.
Yeah, just the greatest.
We're
Two
just
of the
greatest.
Just the greatest. Josh Wigler and Mike Bloom. They joined me last time for the finale of season 1. And now, I guess the plan is to do every finale, right?
And listen, until we outstay our welcome with you, we're here. We're latching on.
I don't see that happening.
And the time gaps keep getting longer and longer. You know, last time when we did Exodus, I think, Josh, you and I had maybe like 5 or so episodes until the end of season 1. Now, we just finished watching episode 5 of season 2, and we're basically cutting ahead about 20 episodes.
Yes. So Mike and I, we do the Down the Hatch podcast on post-show recaps. It's our Lost Rewatch podcast, and we go week by week, one episode at a time. So you do like double time on us, crazy Hank. You're making much further mileage here through your trek through season 2.
I've kind of slowed down though.
Yeah, but I don't think we're gonna catch up to you.
No, especially when we're talking for nearly 3 hours every week.
I don't think we're gonna catch up to you. So we just finished And Found, or as we like to call it, Ooh and Found. Which was the Jin flashback episode. So yeah, a huge gulf between that and getting to Live Together, Die Alone, the finale. But I think that the season's starting Desmond arc is still really fresh in our mind.
Yeah, so we just saw him run away 2 weeks ago.
So it's really fun. It was really fun to like have that so recent in mind, and then hop straight to the Desmond comeback party.
You know, it's funny when this episode first aired, when Desmond comes back, I go, I forgot all about him. I remember thinking that. I go, yeah, I didn't know they were going to bring him back. I figured he just went away and died.
To be fair,
somewhere.
I don't think the creators of Lost thought we're going to bring him back either until they saw how much people loved Henry and Cusick and his brogue.
Yeah. I think like you leave him alive for a reason, right? Like you don't he runs off into the jungle. You never see him again. If you were just to never ever see him again, I think that would feel a little strange. Like usually, like what they would do with a character like Desmond, if they just had no plans for him whatsoever, is they just like throw him into a rock like Kelvin, and just like knock him dead,
and just bleed out.
Yeah, but like instead they let him live. They send him off. So, but I think that they keep him away so long that you're thrown for a loop when he comes back in the same way that everybody else is. And then you're thrown for additional loops when not only does he come back, but he gets the finale flashback spot.
You're like, okay, we're really finding out about this guy. Here's an alternate universe that would be interesting. Cause I mean, we're going to be talking about Henry Gale, who is also another character who really caught on like wildfire, making a much larger part of the Lost mythos. I feel like there's a world out there where Desmond is brought back, but he's revealed to be the one walking out onto the dock to talk to Michael about the bearing, that he's the leader of the others.
Oh, wow. And he was just pushing buttons for fun.
Yeah, or like he was setting them up, that this was because we'll find out that the others are part of Dharma, that, it would sort of be like they're setting the people up in their own experiment to test them, which is Locke's big theory going into the finale. But I feel like that would be an interesting shock as well, especially considering his connection with Jack. So obviously that would change the character fundamentally, but to see a character interact with, our island leader off island so pertinently would be like a huge mind-blowing thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Now it's just like you said, you had this episode, Desmond becomes like a major part of Lost. Like we said, we didn't ever even, we saw him, he was in the hatch, he was running with Jack, and then all of a sudden we don't see him for 20 episodes.
Yeah.
And then boom, he gets a double flashback, 2-part episode.
Yeah. To be fair though, I mean, flashing back to when we all watched this, I don't know, I personally thought that there was a good chance Desmond was dead. Especially when we send him off with him turning the failsafe key, I thought there was a non-zero chance of like, okay, I guess they said farewell to this character. We found out a lot about him. So then when he wakes up in the jungle naked in episode 2 of season 3, you're like, oh, okay. I guess he was able to survive.
Yeah, I don't remember when the news came out that Henry and Cusick had been cast as a series regular for season 3. Certainly in the hiatus between seasons, that news came out. And I remember being really excited by that because I, like so many people in the Lost fandom, I'm sure, were like, oh, Desmond's great. That was so fun. It was so great to get to know him. He's got a love story. They can't just kill him without getting back to Penny. And I think that talk about how this show brings Desmond front and center. And that's certainly like the big character thing that it accomplishes in this episode. But it also starts that love story with Desmond and Penny, which becomes so foundational to Lost, right? Like this becomes a character who maybe doesn't get a ton of screen time, but Penny would not surprise me if like you took somebody who watched Lost while it was airing, who hasn't really thought about it much since, and you ask them to name 20 characters from Lost. Penny comes up. Penny for sure comes up in that 20. And I bet that Penny only made it to like just over or maybe even just under double digits amount of episode appearances over the course of the run. And the way that this episode ends with the fallout of the failsafe key getting turned and the blip on the record and the snow globe of it all. And I remember all these crazy theories of like, wait, are they in some sort of snow globe? Because Desmond said snow globe and there's winter happening
and
outside.
There's a snowman joke.
And there's a guy who looks like Jack, who looks like Jack Shepard.
Oh, fake Jack, yeah.
A fake Jack. Is it all in this like secret little Antarctic bunker? And then it flips to Penny being the person who they call Miss Widmore. It's us. We found it. Like at that point, my brain was like, all right, so either Desmond's dead, but he just did everybody a huge solid, or like Desmond just became like an essential part of the mythology. Clearly, it was the second thing, which is great.
Well, I remember that being a big theory too, is because you had the guy that looked like Matthew Fox,
right?
Which I'm sure was again completely coincidental. Now looking back in retrospect, right?
Yeah,
maybe they just wanted to fuck with us. I mean, I think it's also possible.
Do you?
Well, I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
Is this last scene? I don't know. Hot take from me, or cold take, maybe as cold as the Antarctic. But I feel like the last scene of Live Together, Die Alone might be the weakest final scene of a Lost finale.
I gotta scan the Lost.
Like, especially in the long run,
Well, maybe because we didn't know, like you said, was Desmond alive? What's going on? Could that have been the reason?
I mean, it's real high company between the hatch being blown open, the church opening, Jack dying, the bomb blowing up. Obviously, we have to go back. Like, there's a lot of big company to keep.
Yeah,
plus we don't know if Echo and Locke are alive.
It's a big cliffhanger. I remember being really excited after the season 2 finale, and being really pumped to see where they were going to go for season 3. Like 3 of our main characters have been captured. We just found out you can leave the island, but here's what it takes: you gotta murder people. And strike a deal with the devil in order to get out of there. And I thought that was a shocking development for a character who I had really liked so much. There was just a lot. Hey, what happened to the hatch? Is Locke okay? Is Desmond okay? Is Mr. Echo okay? Like, we just don't know the answers to those questions. So it left a lot in the air. And then it introduced the possibility of someone is actively looking for the island, which means there is an active rescue effort on the outside. So that was really alluring. And also everyone was like, what the hell's the purple sky? What the frack with the purple sky? What's up with all of that? Also, I think everybody on the island reacts relatively coolly to the purple sky, which maybe, they do the thing that Mike is doing right now, or they cover their ears, they're all freaking out. But then scenes just continue as if nothing happened. So that's a kind of strike for me against the episode if you're stacking it up against other finales. So, Mike, I was chewing on what you said. Is it the weakest ending scene of all the finales?
And how's it taste?
Ultimately, I think you're right. Ultimately, I do think you're right, just compared to everything else, because that final montage of season 1 is so good, and that going down the hatch is so iconic. And I know in the real time it was frustrating, but I think now, years later, it's legendary. Season 3 is We Have to Go Back, which is the all-timer. Season 4 is It's My Lock in a Box, which was such a shock. Like, how the hell are we going to explain that? And then season 5, we flash to white. A nuclear bomb just went off. What the hell? And then obviously season 6, you say what you will about the show, but I think that the final moments are really, really, sweet and tender and wonderful, and they make you cry. So they're just iconic in their own way. So saying all of that, my friends, I actually think I'll advance the ball, Mike Bloom.
Ooh, okay.
I think season 2 is the weakest finale of Lost.
I'd agree. I would agree.
And I think it's a great episode. I think it is, if not a top 10 episode of Lost, I think in my rankings of Lost episodes, I'm pretty sure I have it top 10, but it would be just outside if not. But every other finale is a declarative top 10 episode.
Oh, so you put down the blast doors like Locke did, or like Echo did. You're forcing him outside, saying like goodbye, and now you're gonna go crying. Love to get guy Dylan's gonna go cry in the jungle before Charlie finds him.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's gonna happen. I'm pretty sure I have it top 10. I'll do a quick check.
Do you have it above Man of Science, Man of Faith?
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Well,
I think for me, it's the best episode of season 2.
It's an interesting comparison, at least from like a title perspective, right? Because they both have such similarities where it's like phrase, comma, phrase. And obviously Man of Science, Man of Faith is used to represent Jack and Locke. I mean, Locke literally vocalizes that discrepancy over Exodus, but to have this parallel, I guess, are we mapping one-on-one? Is Jack live together and Locke die alone?
It seems like it in this moment. It's not good for Locke.
Is there a good Locke?
He's gonna die with Echo if he's gonna die at least. I just looked. I have Live Together, Die Alone as my 11th best episode of Lost, and the highest rated season 2. So no season 2 episodes in my top 10.
Mm-hmm.
How about that?
With all the great episodes of season 2.
I think that this is so I have this at 11, and then I think my next best is it's a while. It goes back pretty far. Yeah, it's not until the orientation in Man of Science, Man of Faith twofer, which is in the 23-24 spots. I think that
23 is one of the numbers.
It is. You just went through all of season 2. Mike and I are at the start of this journey, and all Lost is better than no Lost, right? Like Lost is the best. So even when it's at its weakest, like diaper shaking butt video of Charlie in Fire Plus Water, like everybody, there's still something to enjoy. But was it a slog to get through to any degree?
Fire Plus Water was worse than I remember.
That's nerve wracking.
And I remember talking about it with I forget who I was talking with, but I think the thing was we all like Charlie.
Yeah.
And Charlie is he's a complete ass in this episode.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to hate Charlie, and I don't know if it's the episode so bad, or the fact that they make Charlie out to be such a jerk. And it's like I don't want to hate Charlie. I can hate Locke. I can hate Jack. I can hate Kate. But there's two people I don't want to hate. I don't want to hate Hurley.
Yeah, Charlie.
And I don't want to hate Charlie.
Charlie.
Yeah, and this one is just he does something that's just not. You can't forgive him for it. But eventually, I guess you do. He redeems himself at the end, but
it's a long road.
I think it was just more of like the whole episode. I'm like, I don't want to hate Charlie. I don't want to hate Charlie. I don't want to hate Charlie. And I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Josh and I are still in the period where the tailies and the fuselage people, who we've coined just 815, are still separated. When they come together, because I feel like we've actually been for the most part, pretty largely high on the first part of season 2, but I remember, at least in my memory, that when they sort of come together, that's when the season takes a bit of a dip in terms of quality. Did that track with you on your rewatch?
No, I didn't think so. In fact, most of the episodes I thought were better than what I remembered.
Okay.
I had debates with people about Ana Lucia. Some people just hate her, and I said, well, I think that she was under a lot of pressure.
She went through a lot.
Yeah. I think the acting of Michelle Rodriguez was a lot better than I thought. Looking back, did a great job, a fantastic job, because she did what she's not supposed to be liked, but there's reasons why we don't. It's almost like Jen in the big, season 1. We're not, we don't like Jen, but then we see his backstory. Go, okay. You start seeing Ana Lucia's backstory, and you got going, well, she went through a lot, and now she's thrown into this. You survive a plane crash. Was it another 48 days? The other 48 days?
Yeah.
Which I think is a great episode, because the way they do it, it really shows what she went through. And then her not best friend, but her partner, Echo, stops talking for 40 days. Right. So she has no one to bounce ideas off. So she's put in this whole trying to keep people alive, and people are dying, and she's not succeeding. So people will argue with me, but I think Ana Lucia is not as bad as people say.
I think we've been enjoying Ana Lucia, actually. She's always giving Sawyer crap, and that's fun. It's fun to see someone put Sawyer in his place. So we've been enjoying that. But I mean, we're at a point now in the episode we're talking about here where Ana Lucia has just been killed. Libby has just been killed. I do think that there is Lost always did such a great job of setting the stakes very high going into a finale. Without fail. That was always the case, that like something massive was on the line. And I think that what's interesting about season 2, and maybe why it just like kind of like by necessity rates a little lower than some of the other finales, is what seems to be on the line. It is kind of world-ending stakes ultimately, where like the question is, are we going to push the button or not? But it's a philosophical question, and you're going into the finale and you don't know whether or not that's going to do anything. Like maybe Locke is right. Maybe Locke has it right. Locke's been right about a lot of stuff before. If he's saying don't push the button, maybe he's got it. And like it's like this existential battle in the hatch. But in this trek across the island, what you're dealing with is like this plan to go and like extort the others out of like giving them back Walt, basically, or like to like try to and like kind of like subvert Michael's plan at least. But that's the big piece of it, is what's happening across the island is it's less about like going off and like finding the others. It's more about like, dude, how could you betray us like this? You killed one of us. You killed 2 of us.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, and so it's really the culmination of, and this has been a little bit of a conversation piece that Mike and I have had over the course of Down the Hatch in season 2, is the idea of the hatch as hell and how it like drags you down to the moral abyss, and it makes you, like make choices and see versions of yourself that you're not too fond of. And Michael's like he does like the real Faustian thing of killing people in the name of saving his own child. And it literally works in getting Walt off the island, but at what cost? And I think like at first it's Jack who's really internally wrestling with that. And I think Matthew Fox is so great in this episode with like the betrayal that he feels towards Michael, because like they were never like best friends, but I think Jack always got the sense that like Michael was like one of the guys. Like, you're a reliable guy. Boone's leg needs to come off. You're my guy. Like he always had like, we need to get off the island. You built this like you remodeled the raft in 2 days. You're the man. Like I think that Jack always appreciates competency, and I think that he had a real bond with Michael. And for Michael to come back and violate it in this way,
he was someone he could trust.
Yeah, and we know how Jack reacts when trust is broken.
Even rewatching it, I have never been a giant fan of the storyline of the trek across the island. I think by far the strongest scene is what you mentioned, Josh, where, I think the breaking point comes when
they've already been warned. Yeah,
exactly. With like the pneumatic tubes, and Jack like finally hits his breaking point. Yeah. And I love that scene because I particularly love Hurley's reaction. Like Jorge Garcia, just such an incredibly heartbreaking job of him realizing like, oh, you killed Libby.
Yeah.
And to see that trust get broken really hit something in me. I feel like, and I was reading up on this, and I think they were intending to do this, but I feel like they just didn't have time. But I wish we had had more time to see the other 3 characters emotionally reconcile with the revelation. Particularly people like Hurley and Sawyer, because I never fully believed this idea that they would keep going.
Yeah.
That they would want to keep going to the dock, especially somebody like Hurley. But I understand, at least to move the plot forward, you would want to do that.
Totally. And I think that that's one of the things about this episode is it does feel like the plot above all, like the plot above in-world realism to a degree. Like that's a really great example, Mike, that I hadn't really even thought about before, that like, maybe at a certain point they're all just like, hey, screw this guy like killed people. Can we arrest him and bring him back for justice?
Exactly. Like throw him in the tiger pit again.
Forget Walt, like a kid could fend for himself. His dad's a bad man and we need to put him on trial. I mean, like who knows like what version of that would go down. That hadn't really even occurred to me. The thing that really occurred to me is what we talked about a little bit before, is like the hatch implodes, the purple sky is emitted, everyone is crouching down and covering their ears, and then we go back to the ferry where Ben and Michael continue like their deal for Walt as if nothing just happened.
But when that's going on, I wanted to point out that it looks like Ben, everyone's like, Q, everyone's just like, but Ben, he's covering his ears, but he almost looks like he's ticked off.
Yeah.
He doesn't cover his ears at first, even. Like when they first cut to the others, he's just like, another day in Oz, you know?
So is he like, okay, because it's because Locke didn't press the, because the hatch was imploding, right?
Yeah.
So is he like, that's that damn Locke?
Yeah.
Is that what he's thinking?
Well, I think probably part of it is like, doesn't the my memory of like all of the nitty gritties of season 3 are not as sharp as I'd like them to be, but don't they have trouble communicating now because the Purple Sky event?
I believe the relays to the flame, I think, sort of
like
are
they're having like trouble. Like I think like you can't find them as easily or whatever it is anymore. Like there's some sort of like navigational mumbo jumbo that just got messed up. So there could be Ben being like, "Oh, this really grinds my gears. Oh, this really throws a wrench in things. This is gonna make life."
It was his fault. It was his fault. He's the one that got in Locke's head and started messing with him.
Yeah. Well, Ben is Ben like can't help himself. He's the hot stove and he has to always touch it. He's like,
I think right now all he's concentrating on is, oh great, here's the guy who's going to operate on my tumored spine. Like, let's just get this deal happening so I can have that happen ASAP.
Right. I do wonder how much that was on the minds of the writers when they have this gaggle of Jack, Sawyer, and Kate being captured by the others. Do they have the storyline sketched out yet that Ben has a tumor on his back and Jack is a spinal surgeon and he's got to operate, and so some sort of grand manipulation must occur in order to get Jack to perform the surgery. It's funny. I adore and am very close still with many of my friends from college who I watched Lost with on the first run. And we had like the Wednesday night ritual. The show was on and like everyone had to shut up because it was on. No talking whatsoever. And we had one friend who didn't live in our house yet at that time. He moved in for season 3, but he would come over every once in a while on Wednesday nights, but not often. And he was like the guy who would like talk through the episode, be like, "John, shut up. Very important things are happening. Henry Gale is an other. This is a very big deal. They just revealed it." And I remember, I think like it was the episode where he gets freed in Two for the Road. This guy, John, was like, "Here's my prediction. That guy is the leader of the others and he's in charge of everything." We're like, "Shut up, man. You don't know anything that you're talking about. Like, you're just ruining the experience for all of us." And then he steps off the boat here and Live Together, Die Alone. And he was like, "See, I told you." Like, I hate that you're right.
Well, Josh, little did you know that man was Carlton Cuse.
Yeah.
In disguise in your focus group.
It's possible.
Like Steve Buscemi, 30 Rock style, like with a backwards turn cap.
How do you do, fellow Losties?
Exactly. That's why he's talking through, because he's like, "This is so exciting. They're finally watching my show." Little does he realize that everyone's getting fed up with him.
I was so mad about it. I was so mad.
And then he's right to top it off. It's like, come on.
That was the worst part. He was right, and then like he was right about like calling the shot on an all-time character. And I remember leaving season 2 and being like, okay, that's great, because the Henry Gale arc was one of the best arcs of season 2. Michael Emerson, just like in the same way that Henry and Cusick shows up and just like defines a role that makes you feel like this character's been part of the mythos forever. Michael Emerson does something very similar as Henry Gale, but like so iconically as that is he or is he not kind of tension, that I remember being like, "Oh no, like I hope he's still Henry Gale." Like the name Henry Gale, you mentioned Another Day in Oz before, Mike.
Yeah.
And like the Wizard of Oz of it all with Henry Gale and his balloon, like all of that felt so iconic to me of the time of watching season 2 live. And I obviously think that no one thinks of Ben Linus and thinks of Henry Gale anymore. Like that's not like the first thing that comes to mind. What comes to mind is Ben Linus. And I think that the show ends up doing a really good job with it. But this episode, I think, often gets forgotten as like, he's not named as Ben Linus in this episode. But in a lot of ways, I think that this is like the first real big Ben Linus episode. Now you know how much of a big deal the Man in the Hatch was.
Yeah, and especially the last thing he tells Michael when they have this little conversation, because Michael, even though he has what he wants, he's going to look that gift horse in the mouth a little bit, right? He's going to be like, "What the hell are you up to?" And he has that great line of, "We're the good guys." And to your point, I feel like that is a perfect way to set the traps for season 3, and especially how the others are going to view themselves, and specifically how Ben views the others and what they're sort of working towards. And it's going to lay down everything in season 5 when they actually get involved with the Dharma Initiative. I thought it was one of those great Lost lines that hints at so much and holds so much more weight in retrospect.
Yeah.
Now, Ben was not supposed to be a main character. Now you see it. You guys have you guys got to his where he gets captured?
No. That's second. I think that's second half of season 2, right?
I think we're probably a couple months away from it.
Yeah.
But obviously you know about it. Why was he captured? Why what was the point of him being captured?
It was it because he was like he wanted to get captured and convince like Jack that like we're not so bad. No, what doesn't he tell Locke? We were coming for I was coming for you.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
But is that Hog?
Ethan in the chat says the combo of the serial with he's just effing with Jack and Locke is excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I mean, he actually Emerson made the actors on Lost, who were great actors, better.
Yeah.
He brought their game. You can see it when he's going with Saeed, and the acting just comes up. And I guess that's why they decide we got to keep this. We got to find something.
I think so. Lost came up at a time where this sort of television was really just not happening, and like Lost is a trailblazer in a lot of ways. And I think the first run audience, had a lot of expectations of the show to like do things perfectly, and that they had every single nook and cranny, not every nook and cranny, John, but most nooks and crannies that they had them covered, that they knew what the answers were to absolutely everything. So we held them to a really, 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 really super high standard that was frankly impossible to meet. That frankly also that Damon and Carlton probably didn't do themselves tremendous favors in, with like the Lost podcast being like very enigmatic and Coin being like, we've got an answer for that. We've got an answer for that. When in reality, I think a lot of the show, it's a network show. It's doing something unprecedented. It's doing something. It's a real high wire act. They're having to, at this point, pump out like 20 some odd episodes a year of this very elaborate story with very little time off ever. In the crafting of this thing, while they're also dealing with real world stuff like Adewale Akinnuoye Akabaje not wanting to be on the show anymore, so Mr. Echo is going to get written off. But also dealing with things like, oh, Henry N. Cusick is excellent. Oh, Michael Emerson is excellent. Let's lean into that. That's really, fundamental TV making. Like that's one of the great beauties of this medium is like you have to leave yourself enough breathing room and flexibility to move on the fly. But I think that there was this like sort of like novelistic expectation of Lost is this closed-ended story. They say they know how it's going to end. They say they know how things are gonna resolve itself. So you expect them to have every single little thing accounted for, but that doesn't account for like if a writer's strike happens or if actors want to go. So I think like it makes sense to me that Ben coming on to the show. We've lost Mike. Oh, Mike's coming back. Ben coming on to the show. Oh, he's gone again, disappearing.
There he is.
He's back.
The relays.
That Ben coming on to the show. He'll catch up. Was something where like they probably had this idea of like it would be really tense if we have a situation if we don't know if he's another or not, and then the actor's performing at such a level that he is going to be able to occupy a role that they have in mind for the third season if they're going to get into the underbelly of the others. If they have like a character kind of in mind at that point, but they didn't necessarily think that Henry Gale was going to be that character. But Michael Emerson is doing such a great job that let's just plug him into that role, even if like some of the stuff we're going to have to like jam into the hole so that it makes sense. Like it's not like perfect craftsmanship, but it's worth it. You'll never know that like the shelf isn't totally level. Like I think like it works for me. Like I think that that's how you're supposed to make a show. It's just that the audience had such high expectations of Lost that sometimes when those things were like big whiffs or like when an answer wasn't answered satisfyingly, they were just like taken to extreme task about it. But you just have to have flexibility,
which wasn't fair, but it's just the way that.
But I get it. I think it's understandable. And I think in the game of television, like one of the luxuries you aren't necessarily afforded if you are in that the coveted seat of making a show like Lost is like fair doesn't really come to the conversation.
So
well, you had. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to say, my big theory, and I want to build this out as Josh and I explore things like the hunting party and 3 minutes. My thought has always been that they originally wanted the leader of the others to be either Mr. Friendly or B. And they decided to sort of make this pivot because just from the way that we see them, you could very easily see a transition where, it's Tom Friendly taking off the beard and being like, all right, everybody, come on, you're coming home with us. Or that B is sort of like, if we're talking about the man behind the curtain, sort of like the brains behind the operation in that regard. This finale, I remember watching it at the time. And if you're speaking about answers, this to me is one of the biggest episodes where if you're not watching the show for the mysteries, you get a fundamentally different understanding of it. Because I just remember watching this live and being like, Echo, stop it. Don't let Locke press the button because I want to see what freaking happens when you don't press the goddamn button.
Right.
And that was something that was irking us for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that's another reason why I'm really happy to check out season 2 is because I'm excited to look at more of these psychological aspects and less so of like, oh man, they're finally not going to press the button. And then they do press the button. And this episode finally, it takes until even a while in this 2-hour episode for the button to not get pressed, but it finally does happen.
Well, I do like that. I knew Locke was going to be wrong. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
You knew he was going to be, and I just like, that was a great line. I was wrong.
Well, this was another thing that I think was great showmanship from Damon and Carlton, who were doing things that, again, in a trailblazing way, where they were being really interactive with the community and, they, do a lot of Q&As. They had the podcast. And during like the whole Henry Gale arc, they would be like, we think that the answer to whether or not Henry Gale is another is only as interesting as the question. Is he another or not? Because if he's not another, this is how they're treating someone. But then, of course, he's another. Because the truth is, it really wouldn't be that satisfying if he wasn't. And it's like the same thing with the buttons. Like, it's just as interesting if the question of pushing the button, whether or not it's going to work, that has to be as interesting as whether or not pushing the button is what they're supposed to do. But then, like, if they don't push the button and it's not an apocalyptic event, really anticlimactic television. So, of course, like, something horrible was going to happen.
And they also set up, when we see Desmond, I crushed your plane, brother, what happens when he wasn't able to push it the first time and system failure popped up. We see the stuff with the pneumatic tubes, which Locke was really banking the Pearl stuff at this moment of like, this is just one big experiment. But when it turns out that in itself is an experiment, that confuses things even further. So you can look at little breadcrumbs throughout this episode where you can formulate.
That's what they used to call me in college, Little Breadcrumbs.
Ooh, is that your rap name?
That was my nickname back in the day.
That is a cool name.
I'm Little Breadcrumbs.
Leading everybody to a candy house.
Yeah, just sprinkle them on.
Just don't be named John.
Yeah.
Don't come to my candy house, John. But yeah, I think there were moments in here where you could see that, oh yeah, obviously something big was going to happen. You don't need to have forks and frying pans nearly hitting Charlie in the head to realize that a cataclysmic event could occur if this button doesn't
get a washer and dryer.
Yeah, it's sort of like a little Beauty and the Beast gone wrong, with all these household objects coming to life and moving around towards that wall.
Once the electromagnetism started, because Mike and I have the benefit of very recent memories of the opening trilogy of season 2. Right, like the effective 3-part premiere of that like original Hatch story, and Desmond telling Jack about the wall. For behind it, there's so much electromagnetic energy, and every time I walk past it, my feelings hurt. Which Mike and I have had questions: is that his feelings or his fillings? But if it's his teeth fillings, surprised that like no one's like fillings got yanked out once the Hatch went nuclear.
Charlie probably sold all his
teeth getting pulled out.
I think Charlie sold all his fillings for drugs a long time ago. So I think like they're all wooden teeth in there.
Yeah.
But Desmond was right there too. Like, why didn't Desmond's fillings get yanked out? Oh, maybe they got yanked out earlier when he on the day Oceanic crashed, and we just didn't see that part.
Or maybe like Saeed with the rebar. Thank God my teeth are made of titanium. Non-magnetic.
Right. Yeah, it's possible. Oh my God. It's fun.
I did have a thought about you were talking, Josh, about questions that weren't answered or because the whispers were a big thing back in the early days of Lost, and it always seemed like the others were around when the because we see the scene where they start hearing whispers, and then Sawyer gets a dart to the neck, and then they all.
I forgot about
so
that.
we always assumed that the Whispers were part of the others, but in the end, it wasn't. So they probably thought it was a cool thing to start off with, and almost like Lost, it's talked about 100 times. It was picked apart so much that they probably, we'll throw these Whispers in. It'll be a cool thing. Well, now people are going, what are the Whispers? What do the Whispers mean? And they had to answer it. And I thought they did a good job answering the question. But in the beginning, it was always seemed to center around the others.
And even in this episode, like you say, you hear them when the others are around. And I think, frankly, even all the way until the final season, that's the case. There's in the 2-part premiere, they're trying to get into the temple, and they're in the underground, tunnels, and then the Whispers start going down, and then they get ambushed by the others and brought in front of Dogen and John Lennon. And whatever.
We'll get to that in a couple of years.
Yeah, thank God it's a while away. I liked it better on my most recent rewatch. Anyway, but I've always felt like Mike has heard this from me, I think, to a degree. I've always felt or I've recently managed to feel better about the Whispers and the others correlation, because I think you can always, with a lot of the unanswered questions, if you just go the extra, an extra few steps and just headcanon it, and if you can get satisfied with headcanon being as satisfying as actual canon, then you'll sleep easier at night if these things really matter to you, which I'm saying to me, they matter to me because I'm a crazy person. I got myself to a place where I feel like the others have an arrangement with the ghosts of the island, that the others are somehow able to ease the suffering of those who are not able to pass in some way, shape, or form. And in exchange, the Whispers are scouts for the others, basically, where they they're here, they're over here, come check them out, and then the others will show up and oh, thanks Whispers, thanks for being our scouting party, because that tends to be when they show up. And in the New Man in Charge, the epilogue of the whole show, where Ben and Hurley go and find Walt, and they say, we want to bring you back to the island. Your father is dead but not gone, and you can still help your dad. Suggests to me that they've always been hip to the Whispers, that maybe the others can commune with them in a way that others, the people of 815 and different people who come to the island have not been able to do, and maybe that's one of the reasons why Hurley is able to talk to ghosts and is also destined to be leader of the others, leader of the others. That's just how I've headcanoned it, because I'm a psychopath.
Well, I think something interesting as well is I would not be surprised, I guess, taking your headcanon one step further, if some of the people that make up the Whispers were former members of the Dharma Initiative, given the purge and everything. So it's almost like you have a friend on the other side, and you have that Oda May to speak to Patrick Swayze. It's someone who would actively want to help you out in a way, okay, we know each other from work. I'm gonna help him find these people.
There's just a great comment in the chat right now that cracked me up from Ethan, talking about the fillings from the teeth. Ethan says their teeth grew back once they crashed like Locke's legs. So
I can just imagine a walkabout F scene where people are chewing, oh my god, I can chew aluminum foil.
Well, I can just imagine the hatch imploded. All of the people who were in there, Echo, Charlie, Locke, Desmond, all of their teeth got yanked out, and then the island gods are oh, that's not gonna look good. Let's just bring their new teeth, give them new teeth.
Remember that time Echo blew up the hatch?
Yeah, that was a pretty wild thing to do.
You realize. I think I realized maybe 3 seconds before Charlie did, and 5 seconds before we see this giant fireball come down the hallway of Echo did make a giant Earth X explosion happen in a closed confined space when he was literally right there.
Yeah, Echo gets wrecked on his way out for the show. They really take him out. Recco Ralph, they really do a number on him. He blows up the hatch inside the hatch, and Charlie has to help him up. Echo's already wrecked from that.
Yeah.
And then the hatch implodes and he's inside of it. So he's doubly wrecked from that. And then in season 3, he's going to get dragged into a polar bear cave by polar bears multiple times, just be like ravaged by polar bears.
He takes a licking.
It's really no wonder that the monster is able to just like totally get him. And like, no wonder why the monster is like, I probably should make a final call on Mr. Echo pretty quickly because dude's in bad shape. He's not looking so hot right now.
But here, Charlie was the rational one.
Right.
Yeah, I would say as much as you were understandably griping with Charlie through the majority of season 2, Jack, actually an okay episode for Charlie, this finale.
Yeah.
Except, I think he was maybe digging the knife a little bit when he brings up Desmond to Locke, maybe taunting a bit for the face punch that happened earlier on in the season. But I would say overall, him genuinely trying to pull Echo out of the explosion he just set off is a pretty good look for him.
Yeah, well, he's trying to talk reason with Locke. He's like, "Come on, Locke. He's gonna blow this up. This is not good for any of us." It's like all of a sudden he's carrying Charlie again.
Yeah. Though I really did wish we heard, what was down the hatch or how did they blow up the hatch? Right. That was the like little who's on first routine where Echo goes, "Charlie, did you know how they blew up the hatch?" Like, no, but if you hum it, maybe I know it.
Yeah.
That would have been part of his little album along with Monster 8 the pilot if he was able to escape.
Once upon a time.
And I did have something watching this. I used to say Michael got a raw deal. I said, he became a Whisperer. I always said he was mistreated, but rewatching this, he did cross the line. He killed 2 people. I always wonder if they killed Libby. I know the actresses had issues with the law and stuff. But did they kill Libby? Did they have to kill Libby because nobody would have cared if they just killed Ana Lucia?
Maybe. I think possibly. I think that when Michael kills Ana Lucia, like that's so shocking. And
it is shocking.
And then when he kills Libby, it's both shocking and then when like you let the shock wash off, you think like, oh God, she was getting the blankets for the picnic with Hurley.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I think it makes it
ties it to Hurley.
It makes it and it gives it a different tone where I wouldn't say Ana Lucia deserved to get shot, but she's someone who showed she had killed people before on this island. And that feels fundamentally different to me than, to Josh's point, an innocent bystander also getting taken out, because that makes Michael's actions weigh even further. Yeah. And it does to him as well. And as we talked about the Hurley scene, I will say with the Michael stuff, I just loved the simultaneous glare that, Jack gives Michael. There is fury in his eyes while he's on that dock. And then it's a very small moment, but as Michael and Walt are pulling away, you see Malcolm David Kelly look back. And knowing what we know now about them fundamentally drifting apart once Walt finds out what Michael did, even though Ben said like, hey, I know you're not going to talk because then people will find out what you did. Walt still finds out anyway. And he basically never wants to see his dad again. I feel like that's an interesting little breadcrumb about, how this relationship is going to develop, where, Walt is really starting to realize like, okay, great. I get to see my dad again. What did he have to do to find me again?
Yeah.
Right.
But I still think it's bullshit that Michael doesn't get to move on, but like what Ben does. How many innocent people did Ben? He wiped
That's
out.
True.
He wiped
to be
out
fair, Ben self-removes himself. He knows well enough.
The Dharma Initiative.
They're the good guys, Josh.
And like I know he doesn't go through the doors and everything, but he gets to make it to Sideways World, and Michael's just stuck on the island. And come on, he did it. He did it for his kid. Everyone does terrible things on Lost. Like, is he like in the upper echelon of like main characters who did terrible things? Absolutely, yes, definitely 100%. But how does Ben get to move on and Michael doesn't?
Because I was asked. Someone asked. They go, would you have done that? So they kidnapped Jay. Would you have done? I go, Jay? No, probably not.
Maybe one of your other children.
Maybe one of the other. But Jay, he can handle it.
Yeah. You've struck out on your own, So like you're fine. You're gonna be all right.
Well,
you don't.
I do find it really interesting to that point though, where Ben has this line to Michael of like, "We had our hands full with Walt." And you have to wonder if part of Ben thinks like, oh, thank God I'm getting this kid off my hands. So maybe Michael could have negotiated a better deal. He didn't realize that he could have, sold himself down a bit. They're like, all right, maybe I don't kill people. Maybe I wound them. And then you'll be able to give me my son back. Because you're looking to for me to take him off your hands.
He does. He makes like that deep, terrible moral decision to do whatever it takes to get his son back. And like, I guess like props to Michael for going for the full blind side rather than like get Ben out of the hatch and like put like Libby and Ana Lucia in the closet and like, you know, trap them or something
Right.
like that.
So
Like,
do you think this conversation
work.
in the jungle is akin to like a post-tribal council
Yeah, he got
conversation where they're
caught. He
like,
got caught.
what the
Who
hell?
voted for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who voted for who? Michael, where's that snake, Michael?
Yeah. He tried to idle them out and it didn't work. Or maybe he got like his plan got idled. Maybe the thing is that Michael feels guilty about it, and so that's what keeps him on the island. And like maybe Ben doesn't yet know whether or not he's supposed to feel guilty about all of his stuff.
Now, the shocking scene, what, like you said, was Michael killing it. I mean, just killing her in cold blood. I've always thought that that was part of what he had to do, because it never made sense. Like you said, he could have just. I guess he had to bring up something that would get the group upset to go after. It just doesn't seem right that why would he just kill Ana Lucia?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The others told him to do it.
We talked about this a little bit actually in our most recent episode with like, well, why did Michael just go running off into the middle of the jungle when he heard the others are there? I fundamentally think Michael's id in season 2 is driven by whatever means necessary for me to see my son again. Whether it means running into the middle of the jungle and abandoning the tailies to do so, whether it means shooting somebody, I don't know. I personally don't think Michael premeditated this entire plan to kill people. I think he's just like,
it's very messy, right?
Yeah, he's like, I just need to free this guy. I think I think the plan was certainly for him to free Henry and shoot himself in the shoulder to say, oh my God, he shot me in the shoulder and got out. I think Ana Lucia and Libby was just like, oh my God, how do I work around this plan now? All right, I guess I'm going to kill him.
Well, I think like it's even less than that. I think like he gets there and he's like, I have no idea how I'm going to pull this off. All I know is I have to pull it off.
Right.
And then like he's like wandering around the hatch like very nervously. There's lots of nervous energy from Harold Perrineau in that episode in Two for the Road where he's like, what do I do? What do I do? How do I get him out? Like even though he's not saying that yet. And then Ana Lucia like presents the opportunity. Like I couldn't kill him. I couldn't bring myself to do it. And he's like, ooh. But I could probably do that. And I could probably kill you too, because I have to do it. And he probably also does like the calculus of like, you know, at the end of the day, it's my son that I'm trying to save. It's my son. You know, it's his son that he's trying to save.
My boy.
It's my boy. And these people threw him in a hole in the ground. So like when you do like the math, like kill the people who threw you into a hole in the ground and save your son. Like maybe he's like, like it's gonna suck. I'm not.
Libby was an accident, I believe, right?
It was.
Yes.
It was. Yeah, that's what he said. Like,
he did put 2 bullets into her.
No, had she not said Michael, I don't think he would have been spooked and turned around and shot her. You know, I don't think he's not James Bond. He's Michael Dawson.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're gonna turn him into James Bond for season 4, kind of, right? It's like he's our man on the boat.
There's something about the island that
the James Bond, the man who could never die, even at his own hand.
Yeah.
Well, Tomorrow never dies, and neither does Michael, so I think it makes sense.
Well, he does eventually.
There you go. It's just weird. It's one of those. It's just one of those scenes where it's like he could have but you make guys make sense where he wasn't thinking clearly. The whole season is about him stressing about he because you see in the flashbacks he got a raw deal about his son. Let's see, Sarah. It's not Sarah. Susan.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't say that name.
You were so close to forgetting about her, and I was like, man, tell me the secret. Show me the secret.
Yeah.
Show me the way.
She's one of the worst people on Lost. But anyway, he had a raw deal, but then he just blows it. Yeah. He just doesn't think clearly. But what would you do to retrieve your son? I mean,
yeah. Well, it's a great question, and I think when they finally bring Michael back, Michael is a casualty of he's a casualty of the freighter exploding most directly, but he's a casualty of the writer's strike, where they like tell a really truncated story with him. They probably have Harold Perrineau contracted for 1 season, and they end up having to shave the episode order down. So the story that they were maybe going to tell there. They had to alter, like maybe Jin gets to the boat sooner. Maybe Jack and Michael get to have a scene, like maybe there are there are more meaningful deep dives into how Michael is dealing with this and how he can like apologize directly to some of the people he affected and impacted directly before they kill him off.
Maybe he's on Lapidus's helicopter with the other new characters, you know?
Who knows? But like, they have to tell the story at a much faster clip when they get to season 4. I shouldn't say clip as it pertains to Michael. Very triggering. Shouldn't say triggering.
Nope, you're just digging that hole, you're digging a tiger pit for yourself, guys.
Deeper and deeper we go. So I think he gets a raw deal when he comes back, mostly by circumstance. I think it's kind of lame that he doesn't get to move on beyond being one of the Whisperers. But I always thought, because season 3 had like the patience to like keep Michael away from the entire season. Michael's totally gone. And I thought, I always had thought like, it would be great if we never saw Michael again. That like, if what this was like a really dark answer to the question of what does it take to get off the island?
Right.
You really have to lose yourself to do it. And I thought that they told that story in a really sad, tragic, powerful, messy way. And then just like circumstance gets in the way from them, like kind of like elegantly telling the redemption story. It's just not quite as neat as it could be, but at least they try.
I think, you know, we talked about this a bit with, especially as they were sort of going into season 3, they started to realize like, okay, maybe if we start shedding more people besides Boone and Shannon, maybe then we're going to be able to really, because we're starting to balloon this cast, and I don't know how much plot we can fit in with all these characters. And so so I do wonder if they had taken that mentality, if they had that mentality at the end of season 2, I do wonder if there had been some sort of instinct to keep Michael off that island. Because I do agree. I think, especially now looking back at it through the lens of the modern television landscape, where we're want to tell more messy narratives, where characters are flawed and do bad things, and that's okay. I like that ending a lot more than ultimately, you know, Michael getting this redemption, yet still not ultimately moving on until his son reconciles with him.
Here we are, almost an hour in. We haven't even talked about the four-toed statue.
Oh, yeah. Let's get on the boat. Let's get on the Elizabeth.
That was crazy. Remember seeing the four-toed statue for the first time? Being like, what the hell? What is a four-toed statue doing here? Why is there just
are we in The Simpsons?
Is this Quentin Tarantino's island? What's with the foot fetish?
Yeah, was that one of the feet walking by the bush?
Yeah.
They did do a great job of just continually bringing up things that for us to theorize on.
Yeah.
Just especially at the end when I can't remember how long it was between the end of this episode and how long it went to the start of season 3, but I'm sure it was 6-7 months.
September, I would guess. Yeah,
probably like 4 months.
Yeah.
Entire season worth.
Because then we had they came back with a 6 episode arc, right?
Right.
Yep.
You're talking about getting rid of characters, and then they brought Nikki and Paulo into the
yeah, but then they get rid of them in epic fashion.
Yeah, exactly.
I will defend Expose until my dying day.
But yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Josh, that like this is a really interesting C plot. And it, you know, I found this finale echoes a lot of other finales, and not just including the character echo, but echoes a lot of other finales in a lot of ways. Desmond housing the alcohol while drunkenly sitting on the beach. I got callbacks to Juliet watching the freighter smoke in the distance during No Place Like Home. Obviously, lots of callback to the season 1 finale with the recurrence of the dynamite. But also, you know, here's another C plot involving Saeed. In Exodus, it was him and Charlie trying to get Aaron back. Here, it's him, Jin, and Sun trying to sail around the island to ambush the others. I would say I definitely like one more than the other, but definitely the four-toed statue was just like the final scene, one of those big talking points going into the summer.
Saeed is the king of the C plot.
He really is, and the king of the sea, considering how he's able to navigate that boat.
Well, that's really a Jin and Sun deal more than Saeed, but Saeed is like every finale that he's alive for, at least. Like he's always going to be like kind of just like commanding the third ring.
Well, you know, Saeed had a good plan, but he didn't. You tell Jack, "I'll take the boat," and did. But what happens if you can't find anyone to sail the boat?
Well, I think that the biggest problem with the plan, this is disappearing. The biggest problem with the plan is that I understand why they didn't do it, but maybe they should have interrogated Michael a little bit, because Michael is leading them to the wrong place, you know?
Right.
So Saeed probably could have gotten that out of Michael, you know? He probably could have been like, all right, So we're gonna get.
They don't communicate on the island.
I mean, don't go full confidence man and shove bamboo under his fingers, because again, like, you don't want to tip him off that you're onto his ulterior motives. But I definitely think I agree that maybe Sayid could have pressed things a bit before coming up with this plan. But again, back to the season 1 link, I also love the fact that these Sayid C plots also involve a signal fire. These I'm going to do what Danielle Rousseau did and just build this big black plume of smoke.
Yeah, so I guess like he really has he has 3 C plots in the finales, because in 4 it's all such a tangled mess that it's hard to know what's A, B, or C. And then in 5 he's been shot, so he's not really involved in much. And then in 6 he's dead. So he's in the sideways at that point. So it's really 1, 2, and 3. But 1, 2, and 3, he's doing the black smoke in season 1. He's creating black smoke in season 2, and then he's blowing shit up in season 3.
Yeah, creating a different type of smoke in season 3.
So he's always in the first book of Lost. He is always smoke comes wherever Sayid is.
Well, it wasn't hard to figure out that Michael had been turned, because Michael didn't want Sayid. Yeah, even Sawyer's going, yeah, I got Sayid to come with us, and you can't. What he can't come. Well, why would you want Sayid? I mean,
if they play this out correctly, which they can't because it's TV and they gotta move the story forward, is Michael and Jack tie Michael, or Sayid and Jack tie Michael to a tree in the jungle of mystery. They're like, hey, we're going to do the bad things. We have to tell you have to tell us what's going on, because we know you're lying. We know that this is bogus. Sayid's going to, whatever method Sayid's going to do, hopefully no bamboo shoots, but Sayid's going to be able to get the truth out of Michael. He knows it instantly. They come up with some kind of plan that is a lot better than the one they've got. I know that they're concerned, well, Hurley's not going to come if Hurley knows the truth. But I think if they pitch it to Hurley as don't you want justice for Libby? This is the way. This is how we do it. This is how we save ourselves and all of this. And I don't know. I think there's probably just a better way to go.
I think you just say, hey, Dharma has a bunch of unused vans that you can soup up if you want to. Come on over.
They don't know.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I always found it interesting as well. We always wondered, why, to your point earlier, Josh, why pick these 4 characters? And I always found the choice to bring them all together, have them do the weird gags that makes their faces all stretched out, and then say, okay, Hurley, we're going to let you go. You run back and tell everybody. It was such an interesting way to end the season.
Well, maybe they just know that everyone's going to listen to Hurley. If Hurley comes back and says all this stuff, it's okay, he's a trustworthy guy.
Stay away. Stay away. Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, we haven't really talked about Kelvin.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about the Desmond flashbacks at all. We're trying. This is the first appearance of Charles Widmore, baby.
Yeah,
I forgot about Widmore. Yeah,
Chucky Wids shows up. Get in the car. I've always loved that line.
Oh, I always loved. When's the wedding pen?
Yeah,
Henry and Cusick just does a really fun job with that, and I love the nickname of Penn specifically at the end of it. It's just a nice little bite.
What if you waited until I was back? What if you were back right now? Oh God, you just love him. You love Desmond.
Penny changes. Remember, there's a different Penny in the.
Right.
Yeah, there was when Desmond initially grabbed the picture, there was a different Penny. Sort of like back in season 1 when Jack first saw his dad. It was not John Terry.
Well,
it was a different guy.
I don't know how it is on DVD or anything, but I know at least on Amazon where I watch it, that they retrofitted it so that it's the
yeah. I'm pretty sure they pulled like a George Lucas where I'm pretty sure only on first watch did they have that different actress in place and orientation, because again, that's a sign of the times that Penny was not going to become a larger part of the narrative like Desmond until later on in the season.
Right. But yeah, the flashback's great. It's great. It's cool. It's cool because it's got this epic quality of this man who's obviously, trying to reboot his life, regain his honor, and then to get another story of this is one of the first times we're getting the story. Earlier in the season we get the other 48 days and you see how the tailies crashed on the island, but that's still oceanic. Now you're seeing that there are people who are coming to this place fully separate from the plane, and their stories are just as tragic and survivalist in their own right. The Desmond flashback is awesome. Also Henry and Cusick looks great with the short hair.
Oh, what a stunner with the short hair.
Rocks it really well. Yeah.
When he gets discharged, I'm like, okay, I'm sure certain people want him to discharge in a different way.
Whoa,
how hot he's looking.
Full bloom.
Read him like an open book.
Wow, Mike Bloom. ladies and gentlemen.
I always found the Libby inclusion so interesting. Maybe it's because they wanted to bring her character back, but like, first of all, her nice little like 80s working girl-esque power broker hair. But secondly, the fact that she gives the boat to Desmond.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was up with that? I mean, there were a lot. I remember I again forgot about that. There was a lot of theories on that she was she hired by Widmore? Did Widmore was the boat purposely? Was he always supposed to crash on the island? Right. So Widmore could get rid of Desmond once and for all.
They never really tell you what Libby's deal is. So it's one of those things where like, again, like you either just have to like be okay with the fact that it's always going to be a lingering mystery, or you have to come up with your own explanation for it. Like, I think that the theory is that like she's one of the people who's in league with Jacob, that she's one of like a Jacob disciple. I think that there are ways to make that make sense. I think that like in the same way that oh my God, what is her name in the final season of the show? The one who's
Alana?
Alana, yeah. Alana. God, I completely forgot. They really do her dirty. They do. Like, do a really bad job with her. Yeah, just getting her arsted. That like she could be like one of those, and that like maybe in that lens, like her being in the institution is because she's keeping tabs on Hurley. Maybe because maybe her giving the boat to Desmond is because Jacob has tapped her to go make sure that Desmond comes to the island. Like all of that could track. I think that you can find ways to make that make sense.
And I think going to the island, the Inman inclusion is interesting, right? Because we've seen him before. He was in Saeed's flashback episode in this season. But I feel like when Desmond tells his story in orientation, you get or I think it's in Adrift when he tells the story to Locke, but you get a much different image of who Inman is. Like, I love the way Desmond tells his story and the saving the world line versus the way we see Inman. Because I feel like the way that Desmond does it is like hopeful. It's like, we're saving the world. Come on, buddy. Yeah. But then when we actually go into the experience and listen to the man himself, he's so resigned and almost like sarcastic about it that you read like, oh yeah, this is a guy who clearly is very facetious when he's saying this. This is clearly a guy who's been doing this for so long that he is just completely disillusioned with the Dharma Initiative. And it reflects there where, you see him really envelop Desmond and convince him that there's this big pandemic outside to keep him in the dark, while all the while Inman's planning to become an outman who's going to get on this boat and sail away from the island to escape the Dharma Initiative.
I do like when Desmond finally confronts him. Brzezinski? Whatever happened to him? And he goes,
he's up
points
there.
to a brown stain. Yeah, he's up there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my God, wait, Brzezinski is like Alex Mack. He can turn into goo. And that's what he is on top of the ceiling.
That's great.
But I thought it was a great episode. Good two-parter. I get lots of theories, lots of stuff that we had to think about over the time. Anything else you guys can think of that we've not covered?
No, it's a really fun episode. And I think like to say that it is the weakest of the finales is like not an insult. It's like that's the level of competition that it's playing with. It's a compliment to Lost. That Lost always brought it for the finales. And it is just a very relative thing that I think that you have to just like by necessity put this behind the other finales, at least for me. Tastes may vary, but it really great to spend all this time with Desmond, and the Fortwood statue is so fun. The Michael arc is so disturbing and sad in its own way. Seeing Walt again, and like the show even like gives them a moment. Michael and Walt, like when they hug, like you do feel for that reunion, but then like you still kind of feel icky about it. So it's a lot of tricky stuff that they're handling, and they do a pretty good job here. So. Really fun to talk through.
So I mean, I agree, like totally damning with faint praise by saying this is the worst Lost finale, because again, this show knows how to end its seasons. And I think what I sort of forget about it, I do agree with you, Josh, overall, that I think they put plot above a lot of the more nuanced character and emotional moments, but they're still there. And two moments that really hit me, first was the Locke and Desmond conversation when Desmond reveals we see the other side of the Deus Ex Machina ending, complete with that beautiful music, when we see Desmond really at the end of his rope and, holding that gun in his hand, ready to become Brzezinski #2 on the ceiling, and reading Penny's letter and him tearing apart the hatch. And Henry Ian Cusick does a wonderful, albeit sweaty job as, he shines the light on Locke, and you see him tearfully laughing at the fact that, he reads Penny's letter and this beautiful message of all we need to survive is one person who truly loves us. And, Josh and I are very open with our respective journeys about mental health, especially when linked to Lost. And that's a beautiful sentiment as well for when we're at our lowest moments, as Desmond is right there. And to that point, I think the scene where he turns the failsafe key is really nice. And the fact that this show made us care about this guy who we saw for 3 episodes scattershot, and then for these 2 hours at the end, I think was a mission accomplished. And I think bringing him back in season 3 was obviously a great choice. So I think it's a well-executed episode in that regard, in that we don't see as much huge character moments as we have in previous and future finales, but even what we see, I think, is well done.
And it does set up season 3 and the future seasons.
Yeah,
totally.
Like you're saying, that the constant that we'll eventually see is got to be up at the top.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Easily.
Episodes of all time.
Yeah.
Which we never would have had if there was no Des and Penny.
It's true.
Yeah, I don't know what we would have done instead of that.
I don't know.
Saeed and Shannon. The Saeed and Shannon version.
No, it'd be Saeed and Nadia being like, by the way, there was someone on the
It would
island.
be Saeed, Nadia, and Shannon in like the meme of like the guy looking at the girl and the girl looking at the guy.
And then they do a 3-way phone call where like we have 3 different boxes where they're all talking with one another.
Yeah. I just pretended to like her on the island.
Yeah.
Just
It's a
because,
joke.
I was I was lonely. I
didn't know if I'd ever leave.
Well, we're actually about to get to that moment very soon, actually coming up in our next week. So I'm very excited to broach that subject again.
Check out Down the Hatch if you enjoy Mike and I doing our Lost shenanigans. We're about to talk about like 3 weeks of Shannon's dead body.
And there are a lot of shenanigans, and not Shannonanigans, but legitimate like. This past week, we come up with theories about whether Michael is a literal plant, whether Sun's former lover is a supervillain. Like we go down the hatch and off the beaten path many, many times, but we have a really fun time doing it.
It's fun.
Well, I don't want to bring that up. About Jin's the boyfriend, Sun's boyfriend.
Oh yeah.
I don't want that. We could talk another hour about that. But anyway, another great time with you guys. It's always a good time talking a lot. And you guys, I really never thought about how this was the weakest finale.
But it's such a
relative.
Oh yeah. No.
Well, I agree, but it's because it's such a great episode. But then when you start putting in perspective, you go, yeah, when you put them all together, it is the weakest of the finales.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic 2-part episode.
Totally great episode.
Yeah, totally.
And again, sets up like the 4-toed statue, Kelvin. What's going on with all these people?
Jack and all speaking Portuguese.
Yeah, exactly. And then Penny, she's finding the island because she's still in love with Desmond.
Beating heart of the show.
But we will not see her boat.
No, it's not Penny's boat.
Not for a while.
Anyway, do you guys want to give your information? How can you be found? How can you be? How can we listen to you?
Sure.
How can we?
Yeah.
How can we enjoy more conversation?
Down the Hatch is our podcast. It's on post-show recaps. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. It's on Spotify.
Woo!
The Apple link, postshowrecaps.com/Down the Hatch. You can subscribe to us on Apple. And you can chat with us on the Twitter bots as well. I'm at Round Howard, like Ron Howard, but rounder.
I am at a Mike Bloom type, like the world's worst casting notice in the world is for some reason looking for a Mike Bloom type to ruin their project.
Yeah, pretty much.
And Josh and I are both, podcasting and writing about a number of different shows. And I know another big cumulative show that's going to be coming back for all 3 of us. I'm going to be back in the saddle with you, Jack and Jay, to be talking about Westworld season 3.
Can't wait.
And I know Josh is going to be covering Westworld on so many different fronts. All is not quiet on the Western frontier.
Don't even want to talk about it yet. My brain ball is firing on all cylinders in Westworld land right now. So if you like Westworld, I would say follow Mike on Twitter and myself on Twitter. We both got a lot of Westworld shenanigans coming your way.
Were you guys fans of the movie?
I like the movie, but I wasn't a fan of it before I knew about the show, so I watched it as part of like research for the show back in the day.
I did the exact
really
same thing, and I thought it was an interesting movie. Especially, I think Josh and I, being kids of the 80s and 90s, one of our big pop culture lenses is Jurassic Park, and to see the seeds of that type of movie being planted through Westworld.
You kind of remind me of a grown-up Timmy, Mike.
I do.
You grew up. You still have a fascination with dinosaurs.
Yeah, I do. I touched an electric fence many times.
It explains a lot. That was really what I was going for. Yeah. And I'm like an aged down Dennis Nedry. Like, get your hands off my Butterfingers.
Yeah, you do often when we have conversations yell if anybody cares that I'm here.
Yeah. It's Mike Bloom. Nobody cares.
I'm a little older, so I do remember watching the movie and being a huge fan of the movie because I'm old. So, and that's our special effects it was ahead of its time, I thought, back then. But anyway, we get off. Hey, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Anytime.
Always a lot of fun.
We'll see you back in a couple months to do season 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Because how many episodes in season 3?
I think it's the last season that has like these 20 plus episodes.
Yeah, I think it's 26.
No, I think it's like 20.
Is it 26 episodes?
I think that's a lot. I think it's got to be like in the 20.
It's 23
range. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, 23.
Because this is technically March today, right? Because it's February, it's leap year.
Yeah.
Right.
We're March-ish.
So probably June.
Yeah,
right.
Maybe.
March, April, May, maybe.
We'll be around. We'll be available.
We'll
be here. You just knock on our door and we'll show up.
Well, again, can't thank you guys enough. This was a lot of fun, and that's all I got. Anything else?
No. Thanks, everyone. This is great.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Bye, everybody.